There's been a flurry of news from the NBA over the last couple of days. Obviously, last week we had an awesome draft special on Wednesday. If you haven't watched it, go back on WCNC Plus and check it out with Nick Carboni and a host of other characters. But, man, the Hornets have been wheeling and dealing. And honestly, these last couple of moves could really shore up their roster. Pat Connaughton, even seeing Mason Plumlee coming back. So we'll bring in sports director Nick Carboni. And Nick, man, they've just been going at it in terms of trying to add people to this roster. What are your first thoughts?
Well, Hornets president of basketball operations, Jeff Peterson, has said multiple times since he got here, including this offseason, that the franchise is not going to skip steps to get where it ultimately wants to go. And where it ultimately wants to go is a stated goal of premier franchise in the NBA, but also to the playoffs consistently, not just 1 year and out the next year. So he says they don't want to skip steps. And what he didn't say is that they don't want to take steps forward. And I think that's what you're seeing here. The team won only 19 games last season. The way the NBA is structured with the draft lottery and where you land if you have a bad season or where you're, likely to land, a lot of teams would look at that and say, let's win 15 next year and get another top 5 pick. But the Hornets are clearly looking to at least start to put some pieces in place around LaMelo Ball, around Brandon Miller, and then hope for their health this season to get a true evaluation of where they are at and what types of moves they need to make next year. And the other thing I will say about these recent moves with Jeff Peterson, including on draft night, is if you don't got picks coming with players, don't call me. Because there are so many times when you look at the report initially and it says player X and player Y and also 2 picks or 1 pick or whatever it is, and you're thinking, okay, the Hornets are sending a pick back. But it's always been the Hornets are getting picks and acquiring more picks. And I believe they entered draft night with 8 first-round picks over 6 seasons. So they continue to add to that cachet. This particular transaction that we're talking about for guard forward Pat Connaughton from the Bucks, they get 2 second-round picks, future seconds from Milwaukee, and all they part with is Vasilije Micic, who they traded for on draft night as a salary match, a guy who used to play here and was never going to play here this season under head coach Charles Lee. So they essentially took a guy that wasn't going to play here, flipped him for a plug-and-play role player in Connaughton, and got 2 future second-round picks. And people look and say, oh, they're for 2031, 2032. Well, those chips are probably going to be cashed sooner than that.
Yeah, I mean, they have really added a lot of – I mean, Connaughton himself, he adds another depth in terms of shooter, right? Does plays pretty good defense as well. And then, you cannot forget the 2 picks from draft night. I mean, honestly – this team, although it seems to be young, as you said, as long as the injury bug doesn't bite, could have a real chance to make some noise, don't you think?
There was so much pressure on LaMelo Ball here and he came in here in 2020 in that draft as the 3rd overall pick. Everybody knew he could pass. Everybody kind of assumed he couldn't shoot. Well, it turns out he can, but they had to rely on that, and he relied on it a little too much in the last couple of seasons when he's been healthy. Now you've got Con Knippel. Hopefully Liam McNeely can spread the floor. Pat Connaughton, a guy that can spread the floor. Colin Sexton was a massive pickup via trade over the weekend that also included a pick coming to Charlotte, and they part ways with center Yusuf Nurkic. Center is now a position of clear need. If you're over 6 feet tall and living in the city of Charlotte, you may get a call from your Charlotte Hornets right now. We can talk about that in a bit. But point is, they want guys to surround LaMelo Ball, to be able to spread the floor and to make plays with the ball and off the ball for him. And it all leads up to a very important season for this franchise and franchise player to see if it's going to work beyond 25 and 26.
I know you haven't seen these guys play yet with this new roster, but just looking at them on paper, what are some weaknesses and some strengths that you're already seeing that jump out at you?
Yeah, so I mean, start with the negative. Really, when you go offense in round 1 on draft night, you are eschewing kind of the defensive possibilities and improvement that you could have made. Now, if Philadelphia hadn't selected VJ Edgecombe with the 3rd overall pick, I almost have no doubt that the Charlotte Hornets would have taken him because he's got offensive upside but already comes in as a really good defender. So when you're taking somebody like Con Knippel, he's somebody that people say offensively he can do it all. defensively, can he get to kind of a baseline in the NBA to where he's not getting picked on all that much? Liam McNeely, a little bit of the same thing, although he does bring more length. Those guys are coming in here for their ability to shoot the basketball. Their second day is more defensive-minded. So round 2, they pick up Sion James from Duke, who basically had the same role of the Blue Devils that the Hornets are going to ask him to do, and maybe even less shooting. Sion James is going to come in and be a very strong, big-bodied guard forward who they hope they can stick on another team's really good scorer. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 7'1", 7'5" or 6" wingspan. He's a guy they hope can protect the rim because now Mark Williams is gone, Nurkic is gone. So defense is definitely going, and even bringing in Colin Sexton, a 6'3" guard, it's not going to be your best defensive player. So they likely may struggle on defense again as the roster is currently constructed, but offensively they should be able to hang with teams and not. They had these quarters, Colin, where they would have a good first quarter, and then in the second quarter they would get beat 35-15.
Yeah.
So they're hopefully going to close that gap a little bit and win some more games, keep more games competitive.
You're talking about the center position, obviously highly needed for a lot of teams, especially for the Hornets. There's been some names thrown out like Luke Cornett from the Boston Celtics. You got DeAndre Ayton from the Trailblazers, and even Brook Lopez from the Bucks, who still seems to be really making an impact in games. Obviously, getting up there in terms of age. What do you think about those three guys? Or is there anybody else that you think that the Hornets might go after in the next couple of days?
Yeah, this center market has been fascinating because we've started talking about guys like Luke Cornett, kind of a second, third center option for the Celtics, like he was Bill Walton, and he's getting paid, more than maybe some think he should. So he's signed. Lopez, I think, has landed. And the other part of this is, in Charlotte, and former GM Mitch Kupchak, who still has a role of the team, always kind of indicated like Charlotte isn't a big free agent destination because they haven't won. They're trying to change that, but what you're seeing is Jeff Peterson can control who he drafts. He can control who he trades for. Yeah. He can't control as much the other options that these players have. And when you're a Brook Lopez, you want to go to a contender. When you're a Luke Cornett and you've won a championship, you want to go to a contender. Charlotte's not viewed as that yet. And with DeAndre Ayton, I'm not sure he fits kind of the locker room they're clearly putting together. Not saying he's a bad guy at all, but I think he can kind of be a drain on the positivity and leadership component that is kind of being built in this locker room right now. So I'm just not sure it fits in the locker room on the court, although he's a big name and it would be a big splash. So what they did was they went and got Mason Plumlee, who's played here before. He was traded by the Hornets to the Clippers, landed with the Suns, as most former Hornet centers now are, Nick Richards, Mark Williams. So he does. I'm a baseball fan.
Yeah.
In baseball, they say professional hitter. A guy you've heard of before but isn't a big flashy guy that you can send in for a couple at-bats a game, and he can get some singles. Mason Plumlee can get you some singles. Every once in a while, he'll crack a double, and he'll get a double-double. But he also plays really well with LaMelo Ball offensively. And I think, I was watching some videos back of that, and it reminded me, okay, this is somebody they know who can come in and they know can, operate in the system, play with LaMelo, and that's very important. And back to Pat Connaughton, we were talking briefly off camera, won a championship with the Bucks.
Right.
His three-point percentage has gone down a little bit. Yeah. He's 32 now. But important connection here, he played under assistant coach with the Bucks, Charles Lee, who's now the Hornets head coach. So a lot of familiarity there. And like I said, when you're giving up just Vasilicic, who wasn't going to play here this year, to get a veteran like that, I think that's good business.
Well, I hate to start already talking about depth, but we saw in the finals how depth played into both of those teams being able to pull people off the bench. I know that the Hornets are focused on trying to find their starting five that really gel, but that seems to be like the next focus is going to be bringing in guys to help them with that depth, which it seems like they're doing that already. Where do you think that will go in terms of a priority rank in where Charles Lee might go after over the next couple of months?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they're done. They have this massive cachet of picks and now a roster that is they're doing some number crunching, so there are some expendable players as well as a lot of second-round picks. I'm not sure you're going to send off a first-round pick unless it's for a big name, maybe another big-name center and a sign-and-trade instead of the free agent market. But, looking at the starting lineup, it's almost like we immediately slotted in Con Knippel to the two-guard spot.
Right.
Brandon Miller at the 3, LaMelo at the 1, obviously. But now it's like, Colin Sexton's here. Could he start some games? Could he start the beginning of the season at that 2 spot, playing off LaMelo ball? And then beyond that, yes, you're adding Pat Connaughton. The center rotation is going to at least have experience with Mason Plumlee, Moussa Diabate, who earned a full-time NBA contract last year with the team. Grant Williams hopefully comes back soon from a devastating injury as well. And I'm forgetting a center somehow already. But I'm looking at Jeb because he's a sports guy. Kalkbrenner, the guy they just drafted. So they're going to rely on him to come in and rotate in as well. It's going to be kind of center by committee as it stands here at 7:08 or whatever it is on July 1st. But as I said, they have the pieces and the space to not be totally done there.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how big of a signing they'll make or big of a trade they'll make.
Yeah, I don't know how we could forget about Kalkbrenner. He's 7'1", so.
Yeah, but depth is certainly going to be better than it was last year. Overall talent, overall shooting, overall depth, already better on paper than it was last year, because you saw when those injuries happened to key guys, and the team only had 6 games with its supposed starting lineup last year.
Right.
Things fell apart very quickly, and you were getting a lot of players in there at a position, a little bit in over their head. And they gained experience, and Charles Lee, the coach, was able to coach them up more often than not, but they were losing a lot of those close games because they didn't have their star players or experienced players in.
Yeah. Well, two different issues as well, really striking this team as well, as on-ball creation and shooting, right? We've seen a lot of those situations, I think, get better in the last couple of seasons. Unfortunately, with the injuries, I don't think, they're where they need to be. But it seems like with Kalkbrenner, he's got a shot as well. And some of the other guys we just talked about, it seems like those two issues could have been shored up as well. What are you thinking about,
I mean, in terms of playmakers, LaMelo Ball, he's your prime playmaker.
Right.
So as long as he's healthy, he is the engine that makes it go. Like I said, when he was out of the lineup because of injury or when he just needed a break off the floor, the offense, he drives Lamborghinis, so it went from being like a Lambo to my old Ford Focus that I just traded in. I mean, it was very, very apparent that things were just not the same.
Yeah.
Now you bring in Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton was one of the best scorers for an NBA franchise for the last 2 seasons in Utah. He has been a scorer since he got into the league. I remember the Hornets were taking a serious look at drafting him and worked him out. He's a proven scorer and playmaker in the NBA. Brandon Miller, he was ascending in year 2. Some efficiency thing. He was being asked to do a lot of that, maybe early, a lot of ball handling, because they didn't have as many guys that could shoulder that load, but they also wanted him to progress in his career. Hopefully he was able to develop, even though he missed some time, especially towards the end of last year, but he's a guy that you're going to be relying on to create his own shot, create some action. So listen, it could be better. Other NBA teams have far more talented and more playmakers than the Charlotte Hornets do, no doubt. But I think you've got some guys you feel good about. Pat Connaughton, I'm not calling him like a big-time playmaker, but he can do some things with the ball in his hands. He's not just a shooter. They are going to rely on Con Knippel to do a lot more than shoot. I'm not sure ball handling is in his future or anything like that, but he can certainly make the right play. And I think that's the most important part of this is, you have a lot of guys that are high IQ, whether it's through experience or whether it's because they just are that way at 18, 19 years old in this draft, coming from the programs they come from, that Charles Lee, I think, will have a lot more fun this year coaching than he had with last year's roster, and a lot of inexperience and a lot of players who had to learn how to make the right plays and more often than not did not.
Last thing, man, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. It seems like they're kind of building this up with Charles Lee, obviously, is the leadership in the locker room and the maturity, right? We've been talking about this and looking at it over the last couple of years with certain players, and I think the maturity level is getting better. A lot of people are stepping up. You talked about Brandon Miller. Who do you think might be an early favorite for, they don't do necessarily captains, but that leader, that voice in the locker room to kind of be stable that I know this franchise is looking for? I mean, you would think it would hopefully be, LaMelo. Could it be one of these rookies as well?
I think Brandon Miller is, if I'm running the franchise, I want Brandon Miller to rise into that role.
Okay.
And I think he was on his way to doing that, and had he played a full season last year, likely would have kind of assumed that role towards the end of his second season. I think he's the player they have with the most potential outside of LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball just hasn't shown yet the vocal leadership capabilities. Some guys just don't do that. Yeah. Now, when he plays the way he plays, when he's healthy, he leads that way. He can help you win that way, offensively. I think right now it's probably Miles Bridges, which is always an interesting conversation considering, the allegations against him, the pleading no contest to the felony domestic violence, and the long suspension he had. But really, he has been on the floor, and I qualify it with on the floor, and maybe in the locker room, the Hornets' best leader, saying the right things to the team, saying the right things to the media about what we need to do. However, and we saw this with some pretty high-caliber coaches, Steve Clifford and James Borrego before Charles Lee, just because the message is there doesn't mean it's resonating. So who can have the message resonate, and a lot of that has to do with who's receiving the message. So I think this draft class was a clear signal of, like, we need guys who want to play the right way, want to operate as professionals, want to win, hate to lose, more importantly. Yeah. So I think Brandon Miller is the first name that jumps out to me as the guy they want to assume that role, but I think Con Knippel could be right behind him after a year.
And there's been so much action, not just by the Hornets franchise, but really all over the NBA, which we obviously always expect. So I think a lot of folks are looking forward to the season, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think you have excitement right now. Yeah. Hopefully there's health going into the season, which has been an issue, and then consistently throughout the season. But I think, as I said, what they have on paper right now is clearly better than what it was last season.
Reason to be excited. Yep. All right, Nick, thank you so much, our sports director, taking some time out of his busy day to join WCNC Plus. Nick, thank you, man. Appreciate your time.